Hello and welcome to Paper Play with Julie K. Thanks so much for stopping by and joining me. And today I'm really excited to share my latest design team project for Kraft Supplies for You. And again, Kraft Supplies for You is an online store that carries the most gorgeous laces and trims and doilies and embellishments, paper flowers. She has charms, she has bling. There's just so much wonderful items in this store that I really truly hope you guys go and check her out. And again, she does have a Zibbit store and a .net store, and I will link both of those below in the description box so you guys can easily find her. I will also link the Facebook group that she has, so you can always go and check out. I do post my pictures of my project there if you need to look at them closer up. Also, some of the other designers on the design team also post their Kraft Supplies for You projects. And of course, any special announcements and those kind of things will also be posted in the Facebook group. For my project today, I did decide to create a project for my mom. She does all sorts of wonderful things for me, and she was actually in need of a storage solution for her knitting needles. And so I did create with her, with many products from Kraft Supplies for You, a Trifold knitting needle holder or case, whatever you want to call it. So I did create that for her, and again, it is a trifold. And before I actually get into it and show you some of the wonderful details about this knitting needle case, I will go over real quick some of the supplies that I used that came from Kraft Supplies for You. I did use this beautiful lace panel. It kind of has a little bit of a Parisian feel to it because there are some fleur-de-lis on it. But it's gorgeous, and this is what I have left of it, so I did use the whole rest of the yard on this project. On the inside, I did use this lace trim. It is a wider trim, also gorgeous. I did use some of these appliques, and Julie does sell these. There's quite a few in a pack when you purchase these. They're really fun with, there's some sequins and then the little dangle pearls hanging off of it. In Julie's store, she does sell a lot of flower appliques, and so I did use this one on kind of throughout this whole project that I'll be sharing with you. And she does carry, I think you get like 6 in a package with these ones. I also used some of the loopy trim, and I used the green trim for this, but Julie does carry it in other colors in her store. I also used this little dainty trim that's sold in Kraft Supplies for You. And then on this one, I used these are all Kraft Supplies for You, but I used these top 2 on my project. This one has little roses on it. And then I also used some fringe trim that came from Kraft Supplies for You, but I used every last bit of it, so I will just have to point that out to you when I show it to you on the project. And then also some dangle trim. I used some dangle trim on this project that you can also purchase at Kraft Supplies for You. And I used it all up, so I don't have any little remnants to show you guys. So again, this is a trifold knitting needle case, and I'll just open it up real quick so you can kind of see what I mean. And I did borrow some knitting needles from my mom to put in here just kind of as a little prop so you guys can kind of see that. But it is trifold, so it does open this way. And then up here there is a flap that lifts up that just kind of helps hold the knitting needles in place. And then down here, I do have all sorts of pockets that hold the different sizes of my mom's needles. And then here I created a little bit larger pocket. And then I stuck in here, she does have some circular knitting needles, so I did stick those in here, but she could also store like her scissors and some other stuff in here if she needed. And then this little panel up here, it does flip open. Again, it helps hold these knitting needles in place. But up here I decided to, instead of just kind of leaving it, I did kind of make it a little bit more functional. I just added some felt and then I put some needles if she needed those, some stick pins, and also just some safety pins up there, just to, like I said, just to make it a little more functional. I didn't use a specific pattern at all for this project. I did go online, and if you look on YouTube, you can find like knitting needle cases, and they kind of give you a rough idea on how to make them. And then I also kind of drew inspiration from this really ugly one that came from the thrift store. I had found some knitting needles in here a while back for my mom because she was looking for a couple more sizes. But I did keep it just so I could show you guys kind of the basics of this. It just has little pockets right here, and then here's that flap. And this particular one, if you were to have your knitting needles in, you would just roll it up and store them that way. So that's how that one is meant to be used. But like I said, that one's really ugly, and I didn't want to give my mom that one because I wanted to make her something really pretty. So I kind of used that as my basis, and I started off with a piece of like heavier white material. It kind of felt almost like blue jean material, just because I wanted it to be very durable, because she will be taking her knitting needles in and out all the time. And so then on top of that, I did attach that that larger lace panel that I said had some fleur-de-lis on it. So that's my background piece. So you can kind of see it a little bit here. And then at the very top, I will kind of open this up. And then I'll zoom out again in a minute so you guys can see it overall. But at the very top, I did add another piece of like some sort of cotton trim, which this one came from my stash, but Julie does have all sorts of beautiful trims that would be very similar in her store. And so I edged that on the very top. And then on top of that, I cut up another piece of cotton trim from my stash. Added some little flower appliques. And then on top of that, I added the gorgeous loopy flowers, or the 3D flowers that Julie sells in her store. And I chose the green, partly because this first angel that I used does have green in it. But also because my mom likes the color green. And then along the sides of my trifold, I did add this little flower trim. I did also add just some cotton ribbon. And again, I wanted a very firm closure because she'll be tying it quite a bit. I did think about using some lace for it, but again, I just wanted it to be sturdy. But I did add the little loopy flowers at the end of the ribbon, just because I wanted to have a little bit of a decorative element to it because it seemed kind of plain. And so the main part is this gorgeous image, and I just printed these off on some fabric. I did purchase these from an Etsy store, and I chose, again, angels, just because my mom really loves angels. And so that's kind of, and then also thinking with Christmas coming up, it's just kind of a nice theme to work with. So along each of the images, I have just some basic ribbon that I gathered and attached behind there. I did use some fiber fill behind all of my images. And then at the top, I used those gorgeous appliques that I showed you, and then added some more of the 3D loopy flowers. And then I added some flat back pearls from my stash. And then along each of the images, they end up, like back here is just kind of some basic lace. But I added this gorgeous little rose trim to edge my images, and I use this on all three of the images on the back side. And then at the bottom, you can see, of course, this gorgeous applique with the pearls hanging off of it. Here's some more of that dainty trim that Julie carries in her store. And then here's that fringe trim that I was talking about. I did have enough to put on the edge of each of the angels. I just love this trim. It is so soft and elegant. Very pretty. And then at the very bottom, and hopefully you guys can kind of see all this, I did have this trim right here in my stash, this one that had the pearls and the little bit of gold hanging off of it. But then, and this is part of that, but then underneath this trim, I added all of that gorgeous fringe trim. And then here's the dangle trim that some of the dangle trim that Julie sells in her store. And then underneath that, I added some more of a different type of fringe trim, and this just came from my stash underneath it. So I have 3 layers of trim at the bottom. So here's kind of a zoomed out look of what the whole back side looks like. And I did each of my images exactly the same, so I'm not going to go over each of them. But again, they all have that gorgeous rose trim and the loopy flowers and the appliques, and then the fringe trim and the dainty trim from Kraft Supplies for You. I will just hold up kind of each image so you can kind of see it. And then the only other thing that I really did is I did loop behind these images and behind that large lace panel, my closure, through these two. And then I have it coming out right here just so it wraps around and I can tie it nicely when it's all folded up. And I did kind of go around this because I did have to cut it out, and I did just use some scrap remnants just to go around that. So I will hold that stuff up so you guys can kind of get a little better view of that and the different images. But again, I'm just not going to go over all of it again because it's exactly the same as what I did. And then here's that little closure part that I was talking about, and then here's that other image of that angel. And so again, when it folds up, if you're wondering, from the inside, you can kind of see this little closure right here. That's why it comes out from the middle like that, is just so that then when I go like this, it can be wrapped around right here since it's a trifold. So hopefully that makes sense. So now I'm going to go on to the inside, and again, this top lace cotton panel, again, this trim is just from my stash, but Julie does sell very similar ones in her store. On top of that, I added some flower appliques and that gorgeous loopy trim, and I just cut it off. It comes like this, and so I just cut these off of here, and they're really easy to cut off. You just trim that little green string there, and then they come off easily, and so they make a wonderful embellishment. And then I also added some flat back pearls, and so I just left that then for my little top flap. On the inside panel, I just added some felt for the stick pins and the needles, but then I also used some different appliques from my stash just to decorate it up a little bit, and added more of that gorgeous 3D loopy trim. So now if I go down a little bit, you can see right back here, I just had some cotton material that I sewed. And then also on the inside, I forgot to mention, I did add a little bit of fiber fill on the inside, just as a little padding to it. And so I do have this gorgeous cotton lace panel right back here. And again, that was this one, the Kraft Supplies for You. This is a really fun one. This one, it would be fun too if you wanted to. Also, you could cut off the little bits and pieces on this one. There's a lot of different options and versatility to this lace panel. So I used that one across the back just because I thought when I first made it, it looked really plain, and this just added exactly what I needed. And so down at the bottom here, I have all the different pockets, and I did leave these kind of plain because I wanted to make sure that my mom could easily see where all the pockets were when she was sticking in her knitting needles. I wanted them to be pretty visible, so I didn't do a whole lot of decorating for this part. What I ended up doing is I ended up just using some small trim from my stash, and I just kind of went over where the pockets were. And then on every other one, I added just some more little flower trim from my stash, along with some flat back pearls on top of them. And then at the bottom, you can kind of see the pretty fringe here again. I added some trim that you can purchase at Kraft Supplies for You. This is kind of a dainty trim, I think she calls it in her store. I added some fringe trim from fringe trim from my stash. I would have ordered or put down more of that trim that I used on the front, but I didn't pick up enough of that, so I had to use some from my stash. But I would have loved to have used this one on the inside also, because this one, like I said, is just so soft that Julie carries in her store. So that's the only thing I did on this side, was just those two trims. So the last element of my little trifold is this little bigger pocket that I created, and You can kind of see I did very similar to the ones I did on the back side. I do have just some basic lace gathered trim that I use behind my image. And Julie does sell very similar trims in her store. And then, of course, this gorgeous Kraft Supply for You. It's a little rose trim. And I do know that when you purchase that one, you do get more than a yard with each purchase. So I do still have some of that one left. And originally I did want to, on all the other angels, I had used this Kraft Supply for You applique, and it was up here. But this one didn't quite fit with the size of my pocket. So what I ended up doing is just adding my little loopy flowers to each of the corners. And I just kind of called it good at that point. And then the only other thing that I did to all my angels that I don't think I mentioned, if you look up really close to it, there is some glitter on their wings, and I use that with a product called Wink Stella, and I usually use it on paper, and so far it's working and not rubbing off on the fabric, so I was really happy with that just because I wanted a little bit of glitter to it without it rubbing off. And so again, that's kind of what the overall view of the pockets look like at the bottom. Here's the panel again up at the top. And it does fold up as a trifold. And it does tie up then. There. So that is my knitting needle case that I created with my Kraft Supplies for You design team. Products along with a few things from my stash. I really love how this turned out, and I want to thank real quick Julie from Kraft Supplies for You, because she did give us a few extra goodies this past month, or this month, in our design team package, because that really helped for me to make this trifold knitting needle case kind of extra special for my mom. So thank you, Julie, for giving us a few extra products this month. And I hope you guys all enjoyed my little project. And again, make sure you guys don't forget to go and check out the Kraft Supplies for You stores and sign up for the Facebook page so you can get more inspiration from some of the designers. So thanks everybody so much for watching. Have a wonderful day and happy crafting.